committee.
Sorry.
Perfect. Now it's recording. There we go. Okay, now we'll start. Hello, everyone. My name is William Miller. I'm one of the youth that are attached to the IMJ committee, and I just want to thank you all for being here. And I'm going to start off by singing a gathering song just to bring us all into this place. And I know we all are all from different places and different time zones, so it's just a great song to get everyone, gathered and together. And then afterwards, I'm going to sing the grandmother song. So we'll start off with the gathering song. And also, for if anyone has any questions during the event, you'll be able to send your questions to the hosts, and then we'll be able to get those questions to the individuals that you're wanting to ask question to. Okay, awesome. Umbe umbe bindege, hey I manetu e bindege, nimosho e bindege, nimosho me bindege, hey I umbe umbe bindege, hey manetu e bindege, nimosho e bindege, manetu e bindege, hey umbe umbe bindege, hey manetu e bindege, nimosho e bindege, manetu e bindege, hey umbe umbe bindege, hey manetu e bindege, nimosho e bindege, manetu e bindege, hey language, and also be singing the grandmother song. Koko nani wabama oni be dakuna, koko nani wabama, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-ah-ho. Koko nani wabama oni be dakuna, koko nani wabama, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-oh hey, way-ah-ho. Koko nani wabama oni be dakuna, koko nani wabama. Way oh hey, 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 way ah ho. Good witch, everyone. Thank you. And before our guests start their presentation today, I'm just going to read a little introduction, a little bio, just to introduce our guests today. Our first guest, Cambria Harrison, is from Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She is also a proud member of the Reserve of Long Plain First Nation. She also became a grassroots MMIWG 2S plus advocate after learning her mother, Morgan Harris, as well as 3 other women fell victim to a serial killer in Winnipeg. She became an advocate for a widespread movement called Search the Landfill, which advocates to push for the search of the Prairie Green landfill in Winnipeg, Manitoba, to get her mother, Mercedes Myran, and other Indigenous women's remains out of the landfill. She continues to share her story as well as work with victims and survivors each and every day through her advocacy and community. Our other guest today, Melissa Robinson, was raised most of her life in Winnipeg, Manitoba. As an Indigenous youth in the inner city, she is also a proud member of Long Plain First Nation. Her mother, Deborah, and her father, Stanley, have been together for 38 years and are happily married, and she is happily married to George Robinson from Peguis First Nation. In May 2022, it was brought to her attention that her cousin, Morgan, was listed as missing for months. They spent many times looking for her in some of the scariest places. On December 1st of 2022, she learned that her cousin, Morgan Harris, fell victim to a serial killer. Since then, her family and her have been fighting to get the landfill searched for Morgan and other remains of other Indigenous women. This fight has brought them to many cities across Canada with full support from her Indigenous leaders in her community and other communities. Search the Landfill has captivated the attention of many people worldwide and sparks change. Manitoba's political landscape and moves all through. Pardon me. This has also brought the attention to Manitoba's political landscape, as well as all 3 levels of government. They have also unified with multiple church denominations to call on the same cause with them. They fought tooth and nail with all levels of government to have the family's first approach. They have also brought grassroots to the forefront in this fight. Without further ado, I would like to do both to Cambria and both Morgan.
Melissa.
Oh, Melissa, sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's
Just
okay.
nervous.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I would just like to start off by saying thank you to everyone who's here today and listening to speak about very heavy and harsh topics. With my Aunt Melissa here as well, who's been in this fight with me for the last 2 years. And yeah, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, so we're going to be what today's conversation is going to be it's going to be looking at you know, the fight that, you know, has brought us to where we are today, right? And, you know, to always remember why we're doing this. You know, I think of my cousin Morgan, I think of my nieces who, you know, they're fighting for their mom, right? And so it as we go through the slideshow, it's going to talk about some of the different struggles we've had and where it's all taken us thus far and where we are in the current moment with the upcoming trial and that. So, all righty. So we are going to go to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah, that was just a content warning because it is very heavy.
Mhm.
Let's see, let me share the next slide. So that one didn't really update. I did have a photo there. So it's just missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited plus. If you wanted to include everyone, you could also call it missing and murdered Indigenous people.
MMIP.
Yeah, because it's not just women that this happens to. It happens to people of all demographics. And Search the Landfill. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And the Fights Retrieve, my mother. And we have a website down there.
Just at the bottom, if you go to www.searchthelandfill.com, we try to, as best as possible, keep it updated with the different things that are always happening behind the scenes. So there's, you know, always us sitting down with this, you know, leader and you know, just trying to get the work done. So
Yeah.
so we'll go on to the next slide.
Our secret.
And that's our elder. We just wanted to point out Grandma Shingus has been with us since the very, very beginning. When we got the news of my cousin Morgan, you know, it's been a long journey. She's been there with us every step of the way. She's performed all the ceremonies. She's traveled with us. And so when we speak of our women being sacred, you know, Grandma Shingus is always at the forefront for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that in Indigenous culture, our women are sacred water carriers. They carry that life within them for 9 months and give birth to life. And I think it's beautiful to acknowledge that cycle and the strength that and resilience that we as women carry, and just how strong we are together. So this is something that I always like to bring attention to people. And I don't like using statistics a lot because statistics are skewed. The government of Canada actually does not know how many missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited plus there are. But Indigenous women have a 6 times higher rate of being murdered than non-Indigenous women across so-called Canada, Turtle Island, as our culture knows it. I don't know if you want to.
And then in a study released by the Native Women's Association of Canada on March 24th, 2023, which collaborated with 266 organizations across Canada, found that 51% of women and girls that were trafficked were or had been involved within the child welfare system, and 50% of victims who had been trafficked, I can't say it right, were Indigenous. Yes.
Yeah, and that's a really, really starking, like, thing to think about, to know that as Indigenous women, we have this giant statistic that is continuously used against us, and we continue to watch them rise. But why are they rising? And a lot of the time, the blame falls on us as women and not the actual perpetrators and the aggressors who are committing these kinds of horrible acts towards us. And it's a very patriarchal way of thinking. And I guess it's really just about fighting back against that and decolonizing that way of thinking as well. So
here are a few pictures of Morgan, along with her poster that first went up when she went missing. And that was our organization, Bear Clan Patrol, that shared it on their page. So she officially was reported missing on May 1st of 2022. So we're coming up to 2 years already, you know, since we got word that she was missing. And May 21st was when we started with our, how we say, boots on the ground. We're out there, you know, as an organization. We brought in, my cousin Crystal, who is Morgan's older sister, and Cami at that time, where we started doing the groundwork, hanging up posters in Morgan, circulating the area that she frequented, and going into all these different, scary places that really, took us through a loop at times. And for the longest time, we didn't want to give up that hope. I know for myself, I honestly wanted to believe that, maybe she had just wandered outside that circle that she, used for her resources. And it was many months of us definitely looking every tip that came in. I know we were on it all the time,
yeah.
many search parties, and
Just
so
late in the night.
yeah. Yeah. So that's, so May 21st was when we really started, pushing posters and getting out there trying to inquire about tips and that. So
Yeah, and the only way they so for those who don't know, my mom, Morgan Harris, she was homeless and vulnerable. She really suffered with mental illness and addiction issues in the last years of her life after the sheer trauma that's been thrown at her from the very beginning of her lifespan. She was a survivor. She was pushed throughout the child welfare system herself. She gave birth to me at the age of 18 years old, and then went on to have 4 more children. She was a mother of 5, and sometimes people just fall in hard places, and it's tough to get back up when there's no one there to help you.
yeah.
Right.
And we want people to, to take that time to remember Morgan as a person, because, she's spoken so often as this victim, as this homicide victim. And, you have to remember she belonged to our family. She had 5 beautiful kids. She has a granddaughter. We have a million cousins. We have tons of aunts and uncles, and it's important to remember who she was, and that's why we always make sure we take that time to talk about her. So,
and when we were on those streets looking, like, there wasn't a single person who didn't know who my mother Morgan was, and they always had something good to say about her. As my aunt used to say, Morgan was always on a mission. She always had something to do. She was always from point A to B. And unfortunately, someone just took advantage of my mother in a very vulnerable way, as well as 3 other Indigenous women.
So like we said, for many months, since the beginning, when Morgan went missing, on May 1st, from May 1st to December 1st, my cousin Crystal, like I said, who was the older sibling, asked me to be that family spokesperson, just because the role I had in the community, and the work that I was already doing. And so for all those many months, up until December 1st, when I got the phone call we dreaded, and he said to me, I remember, because I had to call Cami after him, but him saying, can you gather your family? I knew that night, like, it was not going to be good news, and it was a shocker to us, to hear of so many others that went with her. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just 4 Indigenous women, Mashkade, Bijike, Equin, Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myran, and Warren Harris. And I remember, like, as my aunt was saying, all of her family were sitting there, and even members of the legislative were there, and Hani Fontaine, the investigators and stuff. And I just remember the sheer silence and the drop of energy in the space when that announcement was made, and I was angered by it. When I was 14 years old, Tina Fontaine was pulled from the Red River, which her death sparked a national inquiry to look into the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I was a kid in care who grew up within those systems, and the system greatly failed her, and I was scared that they were going to do the same to me. And then all these years later, to know that my mother had fallen victim to a serial killer in a very, very serious, disturbing, gruesome matter. It really struck a chord in me, and I shouted that at the investigators. I looked at them and I said, like, when is this going to end? Because you continuously sit families down and tell them, oh, your loved one's murdered, but what are you going to do to change it?
Yeah, and especially, you know, for our vulnerable women. You know, I know that my cousin utilized some of the shelters, and by going there, you would think that she would be safe. You know, there's staff there that oversee everything, but instead, you know, that monster utilized that same space and preyed on our most vulnerable. And yeah, you know, there could be more for all we know, right? But we know of the 4 right now, so.
So who is Morgan?
Mhm.
That's a photo of my mom and I when I was a baby. But so she was born on June 12th, 1982. Her birthday's coming up in a couple of months. We're actually going to be holding a powwow in memory of her to celebrate her birthday on June 15th here at Camp Morgan.
We would love some support for that. That would be super amazing. We'd love to celebrate her because she deserves that.
Absolutely. She was 39 years old when she passed away. She was also a proud member of Long Plain First Nation, but grew up in Winnipeg. And her favorite song was Truly Madly Deeply by Savage Garden, which she used to sing in love of her children. And yeah, you know, my mom was pretty cool. She was fierce. As my Aunt Doggy says it, she had the soul of a UFC fighter because she was feisty, and you know, you could see that she was determined and strong-willed. She could get anywhere she needed to be when she needed to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had the honor of, well, from your outreach perspective, right? You come across my mom every now and again.
Yeah, we you know, with the work I do with Bear Clan Patrol, and now being a coordinator, I work very closely and firsthand with our most vulnerable relatives here in Winnipeg. And you know, I remember when we would be out on patrol, and I'd run into my cousin Morgan, and to try to say hi to her and acknowledge her. And you know, but like Cami said, her mom was always on a mission. There she was going, you know. So but you know, to take that time to acknowledge that I saw her, I knew she was there. And yeah.
Yeah, and it was tough for me growing up being a kid in care and knowing that my mom was out struggling on the streets, right? And it was really, really tough growing up. I always had that fear of her ending up missing or murdered because I knew what kind of realities lurked out there. But that never stopped my mom being there for me growing up. It didn't matter if CFS told me that I couldn't see my mother. No one was going to tell me that I was not going to have a parental-child relationship with my own family. And so, yeah, she would take me up and down Main Street here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and you know, she would just be straight up and honest. She would say, look, this is your mommy's reality. This is why she can't be here for you, but I'll be here in the meantime while you're with me. That makes sense. Whenever I was with her, we were always out doing stuff. And yeah, I really wanted people to remember her as being a mother who was actually there, like my aunt said, and not a victim.
Yeah, not a statistic.
Yeah.
You know, we want people to remember her, you know, for who she was. You know, she was a mother, she was a cousin, she was, you know, a grandma, yeah, a niece, yeah.
This one's always good to acknowledge. So Mashkadebij ke Ikwe, it's Buffalo Woman.
Yeah. So yeah, in regards to you know, as everyone knows, there's been identified four victims with no remains, except for the one Rebecca. But for the 3, you know, we are still looking, we are still pushing. And you know, there's been so much shares regarding do you recognize this jacket? You know, Buffalo Woman has been missing since, we're figuring, March 15th is what was shared. And you know, so it's important to put that out there as well, because someone has to know who she is. You know, she belongs to someone. You know, she has a mom, she has a dad, she could be a sister, like, you know, so we're constantly always ensuring that she does not get forgotten, you know, to continue sharing her information so that we can hopefully one day identify her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's been really tough to sit with that, knowing that, you know, they know where my mom is in the Prairie Creek landfill, but Buffalo Woman, all she has is this jacket to help identify her. And it never sat right with me. And it just, we as a society and as a community can't let her remain another Jane Doe. And that's why she was honored with the name Mashkate Bijke Ikwe, which means Buffalo Woman, by our Indigenous community and elders. And yeah, we get tips all the time. But it's not really,
Nothing's really come of
nothing's really
anything,
come
yeah.
of it. So
But that doesn't mean you know, we're gonna stop. We're gonna keep pushing until, you know, we figure out who she is, because she deserves that. Aw.
there's some photos of my mom. That was when she was attending Children of the Earth High School, and right there. I think she looks like she might have been like 15 or 16 there.
And then that's Cambria
Yeah.
on the right, and then Kira.
Mhm.
Kira's the second born. So the three girls were born first. There was Cambria, Kira, and then Elle.
Yeah.
But there's little Kira in there.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
So
Yeah, so again, back to the December 1st, you know, when we were given that announcement early that morning when we sat down with the detectives, it was 8:30 in the morning. And then they did let us know that day that there was another victim, and they were going to go do you know, what is that, where they share the information with the second
yeah.
family. And then we put a call out right away that day, because we had so many people involved, right, with trying to locate
Yeah.
Morgan. And so we came together as a community to hold a vigil, and, you know, to show everyone that, you know, she's loved, and just the news that we had received that morning. You know, it wasn't going to sit right with us. We knew from that moment that, you know what, we were going to find her still, that this wasn't going to stop us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and we actually held it right outside of the serial killer's house where my mom was last known to be,
yeah.
I guess, alive at, as well as the other Indigenous woman. And that was really the start of it all, because that morning when we sat down with them, you know, we asked them, "Do you know where my mom is?" And they said, "No, we don't know where your mom is."
Mhm.
You remember that? And
Yeah.
then the only thing they could tell us was that she was murdered by the same person who murdered Rebecca Contois. And so we were making the connection, well, maybe my mother's in the Brady landfill, because that's where Rebecca Contois was
Yeah.
found the year previously. And you know, it was really tough to sit with, as well as going straight to that serial killer's house. But I wanted answers and I wanted justice for my mom. And I remember sitting there, and my grief was blasted on national television that night, as I was begging for the government to find my mother's remains,
Mhm.
wherever she might be. And that really caught the attention of people who actually, well, they sponsored us to go to Ottawa, which we'll talk. But
Mhm.
um,
So yeah, so what happened with the decision to not search the landfill? I remember that day very clearly.
yeah,
It was a Monday. We were getting ready to fly to Ottawa to go attend the Assembly of First Nations gathering there, so that we could speak about what was happening. Um, you know, because at that point now, a couple days in, it had really hit all media outlets. And you know, so we were preparing to leave to Ottawa that day, and I remember getting the call from one of the officers saying, "We really need to meet with you and your family." And I said, "Well, you know what, we're on our way to the airport right now," and them being so pushy about it, and I was like, "Well, it's just gonna have to wait till we get back," and them saying, "No, it can't wait. We need to see you. I said, well, this is what gate we're going to be at. And, you know, us arriving thinking, okay, we're going to walk into the airport, and there's going to be officers that, no, they actually waited. They went into the other side, the security, held up our airplane, and proceeded to show us a really pathetic slideshow of why they were not going to search the landfill, how it was not feasible, and with all the clay. And then I just, you know, I remember my cousin Doggy, very breakdown, very upset. The girls were like, we're not hearing this right now, you know, and off we went. We left them sitting there. I think with their jaws still open, like, oh wow, you know, like they walked away. We were not having that. So yeah, so we got on our airplane and left, and from that day we said, no, we're not taking their BS excuses. We'll push forward with this then. We come from a very strong family, a very strong line of matriarchs, and you know, it wasn't right, and we knew that. So yeah.
I remember telling them too, like after they were sitting us through that, and I was just like, I was really just shocked, like that this was really happening in front of me. You know, they were comparing the Brady Road landfill to the Prairie Green landfill, and those are two entirely different landfills in terms of the way they work. So there's no way you could actually compare those two. One's above ground, one's below ground and they're capped completely differently. Anyways, and I remember telling them and saying, okay, well, oh, that's how this came about. So yeah, they were presenting, and that's when they were announcing, well, your mother is believed to be within the Prairie Green landfill. And when you go to Ottawa and Parliament Hill, we need you to make the announcements and correct the public because there's some misinformation going around. So I did it, and I said, you know what, fine, I will, but you're not going to like what I have to say tomorrow. And I walked away and I went on my plane, and that's when I guess you could say I blew the whistle for the first time. And yeah.
And I always remember we were actually in Ottawa, and I remember her uncle said to Cammie, you know, on the side, with just everything that was happening within, you know, that couple of days, like, are you ready to be that voice for all MMIWG? You know, as you can see that photo right there on the left, that's our cousin Dog. Well, my cousin Doggy, that's her other auntie. But you know, Cambria got her point across, and the world listened. So but yeah, it was definitely tough, right? Because there we were, you know, having to stand in front of everyone, just only days in of hearing the news on Parliament Hill, when, you know, these girls should be at home grieving, you know, their loss, and us as aunties, you know, looking after them. But no, that's when it really all began. So
yeah, and I remember standing there, and when Mark Miller was there, when he was still the Minister of Indigenous Relations, and I remember after I just walked in Parliament Hill and pretty much just screamed genocide because that's what's happening to our people. Mark Miller stood in front of me, and I remember those words so clearly. He said, "It feels uncomfortable for me to stand here today with my back turned to these Indigenous women when the government has turned their back on them for so many decades."
yeah.
And that really struck a chord in me. And that was, I guess you could say, the first little bit of a wave, but it really put things into perspective for me, in that you know, this was serious, and that, well, we put the boots on and now it was time to wear them, right? When we went to AFN and I read my speech out loud there, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I went there to just let my anger out and tell the world how I felt. And it really caught the attention of people, and it caught the attention of Member of Parliament Leah Gazan, who actually took that speech right to the House of Commons that same night for a take note emergency debate regarding the case of missing murdered Indigenous women, with everything that was going on towards Search the Landfill. And so that was really, 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 really surreal to sit within the House of Commons and to see your words being read out loud by members of Parliament, and then these members of Parliament coming out to meet you and send their condolences. And we went right down to the floor and everything, and it was really, really neat. And honestly, I would never want to go through it again, but
it really, you know, it strikes a chord with everyone, right? Like we have two young girls that are, you know, not able, like I said, to grieve, but fight to have their mom buried in a proper way.
Yeah.
Made no sense to any of us at all. But you know what, that's why we're still here, you know, because it's Morgan has not come home yet. Morgan has not had a proper burial. So we haven't let our guard down. We're still pushing forward. So
Yep, Morgan. So after we left Ottawa, I remember before we even got back to Winnipeg, my
yeah,
family and I were looking at each other and we were like, we're gonna have to do something, you know that, right?
yeah.
And before we even left Ottawa, we said, you know, we're gonna do a blockade. We're gonna block that landfill and tell them to stop dumping on our loved ones. And people are probably wondering, why did Camp Morgan set up at the Brady Road landfill? I always like to make a point of acknowledging Tanya Nepanak, who went missing in 2012. And, you know, she's believed to be within the Brady Road landfill. They only searched for her for 6 days and called it a quits. So
And
this is something that's been
12
happening
years. Yeah,
for-
12. It's been happening for how long? And you know, here we are now saying, you know what, enough's enough. We've had enough. We as a city have had enough. We have as a country, we've all had enough. And our women need to be you know, looked after the way we need to be. We need to feel safe in our own communities, you know, and our women need to be treated, you know, as they are, as they're sacred. And, you know, now our family's setting up a blockade at the Brady landfill, protesting what was going on. Like, no. So Cami will talk a little more about how that started and who we joined forces with.
Yeah. And I remember how this all started was well, First Nations Indigenous warriors, a warrior movement here. They were, after the announcement was made for Indigenous women, there was a public meeting going on, and you know, they said anyone's welcome to come and discuss what's happening. And they showed up there, and quite frankly, they were kicked out. They were told they were intimidating, and you know, I felt really bad for that. And so I reached out to them personally. I just said, you know, you shouldn't have to deal with that when you're just trying to do the right thing for people and fighting for our women. And that's how that really all started. And that same night, my Uncle George went over to HQ, my Aunt Melissa's husband, went over to their headquarters and sat down, and that's when they decided that we were going to block that landfill and we're going to set up a camp on top of it. And so December 13th was when we started blockading it, over numerous days, urging the government to act immediately. And that was over the span of 3 days. And I remember my Uncle George and one of the co-founders of First Nations Indigenous warriors, they were looking at each other and we're like, we got to keep them guessing. They're never gonna know when we're coming. So we would be like 1 day on, 1 day off. You know what I mean? We really were messing with their schedules, and it worked. It was catching the attention of others, and you know, they actually shut that landfill down for 2 weeks, I think, in response to us setting up.
Oh no, right until January. It was a good little while. They closed it down. So you know, yet we were not in the way of anyone gaining access to the landfill. We set up camp, you know, on December 18th to make that statement that we are not going anywhere and we are going to remain here until this government and our city do the right thing. So, and I love this the bottom piece that Cami did here, where she talks about her mom never had a home in the end years of her life, and barely had one to call her own growing up. But now Camp Morgan, which is located beside the Brady landfill, that is Morgan's home. You know, that is her home in the afterlife. We have a sacred fire that's been burning there since December 18th. And, you know, it's there to allow her to be able to, you know, find her way to the spirit world. And she won't go until we retrieve her, until we have her and we're able to lay her to rest properly, you know. And here we are 490 days later. You know, none of that is possible, you know, without the help of the First Nation Indigenous warriors. Like it's been, yeah, but 490 days we have been set up beside the Brady landfill through all the weather conditions. So
yeah, it was actually kind of really crazy to see how Camp Morgan has blown up. So back then we were at the very back of the Brady Road landfill. Like we were literally on the side, like
tiny little
couldn't
shack.
miss us. We had barely a shack. It was like some tarps lying over some like metal rods. You didn't want to see it. And I remember back when she was still our chief, Cara Wilson, when she was still chief of Long Plain First Station, she showed up and looked at us and she was like, no, you guys can't have that. And she went out that same night and bought us a $500 tent, which actually housed our warriors for well over a year. And you know, it was a good tent. It really became our home. And
It was a spring fall tent. It was not made for winter.
that's
So I
it.
must
But it was good.
but it sheltered us, yeah.
But
So
yeah, now we've got just a whole setup.
we have
We've got
everything.
the wigwam right there in the top left corner that you can see. That was built by hand by the men who went out there and chopped trees down, bent the
We're gonna
patches
have
together.
our second TP is going up. That was gifted to our family. And it's quite the vision. It has been decorated and painted all around with the red dresses. You know, this past fall, my husband, you know, put a lot of time into building Morgan's house, we call it. And that's where our firekeeper Ben resides and tends to everything at camp. So
Yeah.
we've really come a long way, that's for sure, like from our tiny little shacks. So
Like
yeah.
we started out as a small group, and since then, you know, we've raised from not only Canada wide but national wide. We've had people come from as far as Sweden and Germany. This has really opened the eyes of the world and has helped people open their hearts a little bit and be a little more empathetic towards Indigenous people. But it also really woken up those same kinds of people that took away my mother, you know, supremacists and people with those sorts of ideologies that continue to harm our way of Indigenous life and, to be honest, our basic human rights. And it's disheartening, it's wrong, and yeah, I just wanted to make that point. So the feasibility study, that's what really pushed off how we got this started, right?
Yeah, so it began with, you know, after many demonstrations and us holding many rallies and just showing them, you know what, we're not going anywhere. You know, you need to make something happen here, or we're just gonna keep getting louder. Well, so the federal government did grant us $500,000 to Assembly Manitoba Chiefs, who has taken the lead on everything for our family, which we're eternally grateful for. But so they were looking after that. We as a family sat in on so much of those meetings that went on, again, because we always talked about it being family first.
Yep.
And you know, it had to be driven that way. And so we had to do this feasibility study that the government requested from us to give them all the reasons why a search can be done.
Yeah, like why
Never
is
in
your
the
mother
history.
worth searching for is pretty much what it said to me. And
Yeah.
you know, my only question to the government was what's the difference when there's currently landfill searches that continue to go on across not only Canada. Bodies are still being pulled out of landfills, and yes, it's a gruesome thing to think about, but it does happen. And with the decision to not continue searching back in 2012 for Tanya Nebenak, that president was sent back then for Indigenous women, and now in 2022, 2024, it's only been amplified due to the surrounding lack of action and accountability to get this search started. And so, you know, we were really determined and we really pushed. And so we said, fine, you want your feasibility study? We're going to give it to you, and we're going to give you all 50 pages.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
broke
exactly
it
what we
right
did.
down to every last detail in regards to PPE and everything. So it was a lengthy study, but it was submitted, and where's the next page? It didn't stop there. So here is, as you guys can see, all the many different leaders, government officials.
You can see my Uncle George not being so pleased to meet Justin Trudeau. That was back at the Assembly First Nations when I did my speech. He happened to be there that same day. And so we said, we're going to make him meet us. And that's exactly what he did. He came and he offered his condolences and whatever. And, I wasn't having it. As he tried to walk away, I called him out and I said, stop for a second. My mom's currently lying in a landfill and the police aren't searching. I know government will too. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And he just kind of looked at me like,
she put him on the spot, but he
do
needed
everything
to
I
be
can.
he needed to be put on the spot. Like, again, we're having a young Indigenous female beg our leader of our country, right? Like, yeah, no, unacceptable. But this is just a display of some of the people.
sheer amount of
Yeah,
people.
Leah Gazan, Nahani Fontaine, Wab Canoe, they've been always supportive. They've always been on our side in regards to, getting the work done. And actually, I'm gonna make note, and I don't know if you guys have picked up on it, but Leah, Nahani, and Wab are all Indigenous. So what does that say right there, right? They know it's wrong. We need to do something. And then all these other leaders, playing games with us, telling us no, they can't do it. It's not safe. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
How could you say no to those tiny little hands that are pointing at that camera? Like, that's my daughter. That's Morgan's granddaughter. And what do I tell her 10 years from now if the government doesn't search? Like, your grandmother's lying in a landfill. That's unacceptable. What do I tell the future generations? What do we tell our children's children, right? And it's like, when does it end? And it's going to end right now because we're taking back that power and we're taking back that narrative because our stories have been stolen from us for far too long. And, in terms of media and terms of them controlling the narrative. And so this is our way of taking that back. So, yeah. So, Heather Stephenson, July 5th, 2023. I'll never forget that day when she sat my family and I down in the legislative building and she made the decision to not support a search of the Prairie Green landfill.
And this is okay, so this is what happened. So we're in the meeting with her. And at one point I asked her, have you read the feasibility study? Oh, well, it just got on my desk that morning. So right from the get-go.
And it was done for how many?
Exactly. She knew her answer without even looking into us putting all that time and work into that report for her. So she came in, very, very cold, showed no kind of empathy towards us. Here we are, a grieving family, begging for her to do the right thing and help us get this landfill search so we can bring our family member home. And she just was, no, flat out, no,
Oh,
it was a bad meeting.
It was a horrible meeting. I remember back she came in wearing a hot pink bubblegum suit to a meeting like that. And I think that says it all. And, when we were doing our introduction, she came up to my family and I, she came up to me and she said, hi, like, I'm Heather Stephenson. Whose family are you from? And I looked at her and I said, Morgan Harris. And she's like, is that your sister? And my jaw dropped and I said, that's my mother. And I was so mad from the beginning. And then for her to sit down across from not only my family, but from the Myran family as well, because they were there too, and tell us that, I'm not going to support a search of the landfill, but could not give a good enough reason why, could not even cite anything from the feasibility study. It really angered me. She even looked at me at one point and she said, well, I'm saying this as a mother. And I looked at her and I said, great, I'm a mother too. And what do I tell my child 10 years from now that your government won't search the landfill? You're telling me that you support the continuous dumping of Indigenous women's bodies, and you're setting a very dangerous precedent to not only my community, but to the rest of Canada / Turtle Island if you do not. And it got heated. And I remember her delegates that were sitting beside her were scoffing. And, at one point they just stopped listening to me because I kept calling them out every single second and they acted like I was non-existent. At one point, I actually had my hands up in the air going, hello, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And it was just like it had always been before, like what Mark Miller said, the government had turned their back on us.
And even after, you know, she told us, you know, it wasn't going to happen. She could not support a search. But what she could offer us, you know, and this is what got me, that's where I had to get up and leave, was she wanted to put a memorial, you know, a plaque over there at Prairie Green Landfill, and more or less, you know, tell my nieces, well, this is where you're going to have to go pay your respects to your mom for the rest of eternity. Not okay. I was just like, wow, you are very cold. And I, you know, didn't want to get into trouble. I had to get up and excuse myself from that meeting.
Which clearly wasn't the smartest, because if you put a memorialization on top of that landfill, at that point you were basically deeming it a gravesite, because you're acknowledging that the bodies are there.
Yeah.
That's memorializing, that's turning it into a gravestone. So at that point, that landfill is a crime scene and a gravesite at that. And it was disturbing to know that, you know, she was like, we'll just put something on top of it. We're not even going to try. And that's something that we've been fighting for so long. You know, it's the principle of trying. But yeah, at one point our slogan was just Big Heather Daig.
Yeah.
Because she had the nerve to post this picture on her Instagram just like a mere week later after all that. And it was almost like it was laughing in our faces. And it doesn't feel personal, but it is personal.
It is.
And, you know, families are out there grieving for something like a landfill search. So this led us to doing another blockade. That immediately after we walked out that meeting, we said, you know what we're doing? We just looked at each other.
We were like, we've had enough. We're not sitting down, you know, we're done being told no. You know, now they're going to listen to us, and this is how we're going to move forward. So we figured we're shutting the landfill right down. It wasn't a temporary, we put it up and people came from all over. And so there's some of the pictures, you know, a little young warrior. We had, you know, some really young kids. We had so much elders, people from our community. I know Chief Kyra Wilson had busloads of people from Long Plain coming out to support us. And we really saw the community as a whole come together, where we all stood together. People were angry, you know, and they were like, how could she tell a family no? And we're just going to leave them there, you know? So that's just a small array of pictures. Like,
that was an intense week.
Yeah.
It was because we were fighting back for it with the city of Winnipeg. So they're calling us and going, well, can you please take it down? Can we negotiate something? And we're like, no, negotiation is the premier has to bring something to the table and search the landfill. Yeah. And so in their response to that was to file an injunction against us, against my aunt, against me, and any and all participants of that blockade protest. And it just,
which now means they were willing to come and arrest us and put us in jail for fighting for a cause that, you know what, we never should have had to start fighting to begin with, you know. But here we are now being served with papers from the courts, you know, from
that they burned,
that we burned. Well, we didn't.
Well, I did not acknowledge that paper. You know, they so much as couldn't even come up to me and serve me it. I was right there, and they handed it to.
I still haven't been served.
I haven't either. This is recording, right?
I never saw no injunction papers.
But yeah, and then it was really tough. But I would like to say that they were nice enough. The city was nice enough to give us a couple of days and said, you know, you guys can keep your stuff, you know, can't work and can stay. You guys just can't be blocking the road. And I want to make note that we never shut it down. We blocked that road, but there's an entirely other route.
There's a second road in the back, that they could have still went into. So we weren't stopping business.
No, it was still open and functionable.
Yeah.
And we've never had an issue with the dump trucks. You know, they've always been very, I guess you can say, supportive. Like during the blockade, we had a few drive through, and they're just, you know, they'd give a little nod.
They understood why we were there.
They understand why we're there, and So I wasn't able to put any photos here, but so as my aunt was saying, like WAP and Nahani had been
Yes.
supporting since the beginning because we reached out to them after Heather's.
Yeah, yeah. So during the blockade, you know, when we were at you know, at camp and had the road set up and everything, Nahani Fontaine reached out to me, wanted to come and see us at camp and have a meeting with, you know, with the core of us. And you know, so she's always, and we could all say this, she has always been very supportive, has always, you know, I remember back to like when Morgan first went missing and we were circulating her posters out there, and Nahani always checked in for an update, and you know, I always kept her in the loop on anything new I heard from the detectives. And then you know, and then here comes WAB, you know, we had an election that was up and coming in October, and after, you know, all that turmoil with the injunction and the whole, you know, thing with Heather Stephenson.
Requested that meeting, right? I think. Pretty sure he did.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, he requested that meeting with us.
His assistant messaged me and asked if we would come in to sit down with him to discuss you know, some possibilities, some options. And you know,
Yeah.
so he's been good, we could say, from the get-go. He opened up that meeting smoking his pipe with us, which is, you know, a very sacred thing to do, and you have to honor, right? You have to honor what you share at that time. And you know, he did tell us at that time, way back when, that, you know, before he was even premier, that he supports it, and that if he got elected in, that they would definitely try, that we would move forward with it. So so yeah, so they've been good throughout it all. He's still pretty, you know, pretty good. He's still pretty good. But now it's just a matter of time, right? So but yeah.
And yeah, I guess I would just like, those are really the only leaders who really have sat down with us, you know. We've just, it just goes to show how hard and how long we've just been really pushing for this work, and just how many meetings we've had to sit down through repeatedly, right?
But we could Grand Chief Kathy Merrick has been really, you know, our main support, you know, has been there since the beginning through it all. You know, and that goes back to like just our core group, eh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
and like throughout the last year, we've had so many statements. Like after Heather made that decision to not search the landfill, you know, we had so many different organizations and unions speaking out. I wasn't able to get a list together, but like Amnesty International, for example, denounced Heather Stephenson's decision to not search. You know, the United Church Canada released statements, many different churches, unions, and that's when the awareness was really starting to kick off again. We even had motorcycle groups from across Canada come on down and do some charity runs to help keep our camp going. And so without all the support that we've been given, you know, I don't know how we would have been able to make it, because when we do things collectively as a society through political actions, you know, you really do make a wave, and people start to notice that. And a lot of people don't like that at the same time too. But yeah, I was just saying, like, you know, how many political actions we've made throughout the last year, like just like when we do things collectively as a society, that's how you really make that wave, right?
absolutely. We're growing stronger with numbers, right? And that's what it's all about. So
Yeah.
And we've always, I know this always important to also say too, how, you know, it's always been about the same purpose, right? And that's where, again, it comes back to, you know, some people that come in with their own different set of motives. And then we've just been able to move along from that. But this brings us to September 18th. Again, with the help of you know, Assembly Manitoba Chiefs, SCO, MKO, we as a family made the call to International Day of Action to search the landfill September 18th of 2023. And we made that announcement using our social media platforms. So not even 2 weeks prior to that day, I think was when we first put it out. And
It was kind of crazy.
it was crazy how fast it went right across the country.
We had a template, so anyone that wanted to host their own rally could just fill it out, right? And we didn't know how many people were going to actually do it, but we ended up having 18 different rallies on September 18th, 2023.
Yeah.
Across Turtle Island, pushing for a search of the landfill straight across almost every province. And my family and I, we not only protested on Parliament Hill that week, we protested in Toronto, we protested in Montreal, Quebec as well.
Yeah, we went around, we were at Parliament Hill early that day. And then we raced from there to Montreal. The same night. And then drove back to Ottawa. And then we rallied in Toronto 2 days later. And yeah, but we'll also talk about so kind of what happened that morning though, when we were out there. So bring that up.
So on September 18th,
early that morning,
we actually had a meeting with the Minister of Indigenous Relations, Gary and Sangri, the federal government, on the day of action in Ottawa. It was originally supposed to be in Winnipeg, and then they found out we had this giant thing planned, and so they said, okay, I will meet you over there, because that's where he was at the time. And
they contacted AMC, and were requesting to see us prior to our rally that day, which was scheduled, I think, for around 11 a.m. We were opening up with a media conference and then gonna walk from there. But so the night before, we're told, oh, he wants to meet you guys tomorrow morning, 8:30. Can we have you guys all attend? So of course, we're thinking right on, good news. He's got to be sharing something with us. We go to this meeting. We sit down with the federal minister again for him to say to us, oh, what a day, what a morning that was. For him to say to us, they had more questions. This was after they had the feasibility study, right? So they had more questions. So they brought us in to tell us that. And here we are thinking, oh, you know what? They're going to give us some good news. So it went from bad to ugly real fast.
Yeah, just between political leaders. And, I remember looking at them and I said, I was like, the sheer audacity to pull my family and I in on an International Day of Action where I'm trying to push for a landfill search, for you to bring me to the table and tell me you have more questions and that you cannot bring anything. That's when I quite literally walked out and I looked at the federal minister and I said, the next time you make me sit in one of these rooms is the next time you will have a decision made. And that's when you will bring something to the table. And I remember his trauma support had chased me out and she was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? I'm so sorry. She gave me her little card and everything. But, it just, that I was upset. It was out of a moment of anger and hurt, but there was also a lot of truth in it as well, because it's true. You're making families sit down in these rooms continuously and repeatedly, and we're doing the work, which families should not ever have to do. But we've had to learn over the last year how these landfills work, how we're going to retrieve our loved ones, what kind of stuff goes into a landfill search in terms of the studies that we've had to do and sit through, and how we just really pushed for that. And
we love this picture. So this was while we were out in Ottawa and Montreal on September 18th. This was a picture taken here at home in Winnipeg. And we were so proud. We were so proud of everyone for coming together like that without us being present and really delivering, and getting their message across. So yeah, we were proud of that.
Yeah, it was like a sea of red across Turtle Island is how I would describe it. And so imagine after we just did all that work in Parliament Hill, Toronto, Montreal, my family and I, we came back and this was quite literally plastered all over billboards across Winnipeg because she could not handle the heat. And you know, she was getting accused of discrimination and a lot of very serious things for her lack of action and just well, the billboard. My family's grief was plastered over a billboard basically saying, screw your landfill search, we're not bringing your mom home. And like, that's okay.
And vote PC.
Yeah, like from a political leader, this is who we are supposed to trust to lead our city. Like, you know what I mean? It makes me so angry. And yeah, like for health and safety reasons, the answer on the landfill dig just has to be no. But when I asked her, what are your health and safety reasons? She couldn't give anything. It wasn't until she spoke to the media that she had things to say, because then she had a little bit of time to read the feasibility study that she just received that morning. So, you know, she really made herself look like an idiot. And, you know, it was very dangerous. Remember we were saying, well, what message is she sending to our Indigenous people? And
she's, that's, you know, it's not safe to be Indigenous, that you have a target on your back. And, you know, if you go missing, won't matter, because that PC government won't go looking for you, won't have the police go looking for you, and just leave you there. So that was the message she was sending out. I couldn't think of anything more racial than that. So it was pretty bad. It was very bad. It was hurtful. And you know, not something you want to be driving by and having to see.
And you know, like it opened the hearts of Manitobans, because you know, people who were progressive conservative, even that didn't sit right with them. You know, her own delegates were standing up against her before she even put them up, and they said, you should not be doing this. And she did it anyways. And it was a power trip. So, you know, in response, this was displayed on buses and billboards in Winnipeg. I think their 6-month contract just ended, so like they're not around anymore, but Southern Chiefs organization.
SCO, Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, they put together these billboards that were all over the city. They were plastered all over the buses. Didn't matter where you go, you saw one of these. And that just goes to show that the support we had in regards to our Indigenous communities, right? Still saying, you know what, this landfill needs to be searched. We didn't want people to forget, you know, this whole thing. So
yeah, and that's been really one way of us being able to like raise awareness. Like when you go and drive around Winnipeg, for those who aren't here, over the last 2 years, you wouldn't have seen red dresses hanging around in people's windows, but now you do. You see red dresses everywhere across the city. You see people raising awareness towards what's going on. You see people writing "Search the Landfill" on their windows, on their businesses. You know, it's really caught the eye of.
I actually was just telling Cami last night, one of our like my husband and I's teacher, knowledge keeper, he just said to us last week as we were in ceremony, you know, and he's always been a big supporter of us continuing to use our voices, right? And but he said to me while we were in ceremony, he said, you know, talking about the whole MMIWG2S and you know how long it's been around, and how when the death of Tina Fontaine happened, how her death woke up our city, you know, angered our city, woke up our city. And then, you know, he went on to say your cousin, Morgan Harris, and the other 3 ladies, the other 3 women that were also murdered by him, woke up the country. You know, the country is now spoken, and they're angry, and things need to change, you know, for our people. You know, we are not a second-class citizen, you know, so we're going to see change, and we're not going to stop until we do.
You just reminded me of something back when we were in the House of Commons and my words were being read out loud and all those people came out to meet us. I remember one of them looked at me and they said, "You're going to burn this house down." And I think we've been doing just that, really pushing for some changes. Like, you can see that.
Do you see how tired we look? We're tired.
But Yeah, so obviously, after the first feasibility study, there was a little bit more reporting to be needed to do because they had a couple more questions just around safety and stuff, and we delivered that respectively. So we get it.
We said, okay, give us the money to do the second report.
Yeah.
Now this operational report. So they did that. They released the funds, which we then sat down with an amazing organization, ISN Musqueam. They
Search
reached
and
out
rescue
to us.
team.
Yeah, they are a search and rescue team.
And in Sault Ste. Marie, I think.
Yeah, they are from Ontario, and they showed us every which way that things can be done. And so we welcomed them on board. We were like, you know what, if anyone's going to do the work, this is who we want them to do it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And they were so amazing. They were very family first. And, the second report, my family and I were extremely involved in.
Yeah.
I contributed quite a bit to the support actually.
yeah, the building,
Yeah.
We talked about in that report how we want a parcel of land, have the mayor. We sat down with the mayor. He said he can't help, financially. What can he give? Well, Chief Wilson said to him, give us some land back. We're all about land back. He said, I will get back to you. We're coming on a year now. We have not heard anything back from Mayor Gillingham. So that goes to show that just fell on deaf ears as well, trying to request support from the different levels. He wrote us right off right away. And so we continued on with the second report and all the work and the time that was put into it and everything that needed to be done, just for them to sit on it for 2 months. We gave it to them in early January. And that actually goes into I think the next.
Oh yeah, so that's when I in response, because there was just such a lack of action to getting this
We didn't hear
started.
nothing from them for
Even
2
though,
months.
it takes a lot to be able to stand in front of a nation and say that you support and you're going to do something, but it takes a whole other being to be able to actually put those words into actions. And I was sick of words with no actions, and I was sick of being used as a political ploy, I guess. I'm battling with the government on national television of all places, fighting for my rights now as well, because I was quite frankly discriminated against, and my community was discriminated against when they made that decision to not search back then. That was setting a precedent, and it was telling Indigenous women that they were not worth searching for. It was telling other people that they were not worth searching for. If you were to, for whatever reason, go missing and end up in a landfill, they were not going to search for you. And that was a very dangerous precedent to set, and it didn't sit well with me. It was about addressing the fact that every human being has the right to have a dignified burial, and you don't have the right to take that away from me. Addressing just, the sheer amount of lack of actions. By not addressing the landfill search, you are quite literally discriminating and shoving missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited Plus to the side, and their families at that. And so it was against the province of Manitoba and the Progressive Conservative Party. Heather Stephenson, for example, like her billboard, that billboard was really what kickstarted it, because it was just, who in their right mind would do that, and who in their right mind would think that that's okay to do?
Exactly.
Victim's family. And so I said, fine, if you want to do this, I'm gonna fight back, and I'm gonna fight back 10 times as hard as you. And it's funny that day I filed it, Heather Stephenson made the announcement that she was going to step down as the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. And so some days I wish I would have done that sooner. Maybe I could have boosted things, made it go faster a little bit, but I made my point, and I'm still continuing to make my point to this very day. And that's still going through the process. So we got sick of it, right? We got sick of just waiting and waiting.
So like we said, it was given that operational report after months of doing. It was given to them in early January, and for 2 months we sat there with nothing. No answers. No one was getting back to AMC. They were, emailing the federal government. Nothing, no word back from the provincial government. So then there we were again, coming up to Women's Day. No better way to celebrate than to do a day of action again. So about
To
bringing
do
them
a big
home.
thing.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
was again right across Canada. That goes to show how much our support has gained. And so yeah, with promise after promise, but no actions to back up, my family and I decided enough is enough. And on International Women's Day, we held the Day of Action towards Search the Landfills. A rally was held in Winnipeg, Toronto, Ontario, Edmonton, Red Deer, Parliament Hill, Ontario,
And East Vancouver.
BC. So it was
Like, it
quite
was
the turnout. It was, yeah, it was an amazing day.
Yeah.
So
Like, it was just so beautiful to see.
I think it was the following week we then got
Yeah.
there. Oh yeah, yeah. So it's funny because we walked from we did a round dance at Portage Main, and then we walked over to the ledge, and we were demanding. We were out there chanting, "Bring Wob out, bring Wob out," and yeah, search the landfill. And you know, he states he wasn't there, but there was that response to us being there and calling him out. And so
Yeah. So that's when he announced that he would give $500,000 for trauma supports for the upcoming trial. For those who don't know, we have our upcoming trial next month. Just mere weeks away.
actually next week 29th it starts. Yeah,
Yeah.
April 29th, but that first week is not relevant to us having to be there. So but yeah, so meeting was scheduled on March 25th, where we sat down with everyone again.
Yeah, everyone, because we said you will not sit us down again unless
everyone is
every
there.
single person to
Yeah.
the table, because we're sick of this bureaucracy and political
Yo-yo.
yo-yo of being told, oh well, like this is pretty much what they were telling us at the last year. They're saying you're the federal government's problem, you're the provincial government's problem, you know, you're the municipal government's problem, and it was just a bunch of back and forth and runarounds. And
so we demanded, we said, no, we're not doing that no more. You want to sit down with us? Everyone needs to be there at that table. Everyone present, all the stakeholders, everyone needs to be there. Otherwise, we don't sit down. So it happened.
yeah, and so yeah.
And that was the day they announced the $40 million commitment. So
yeah, and when people always say, well, $40 million, that's a lot of money. Well, how much is your mother worth? You would say priceless, right?
yeah.
So why are we putting a price on Indigenous women, on Indigenous lives, on any person for that matter, when they're a human being at the end of the day and not a number, not a statistic? They're someone who is loved and is loved, someone who lived a life full of stories. And yeah, I don't know what more I need to say that.
And I think I've always asked that, you know, because that's always been, you know, talked about is the dollar amount. And then my first response always is to that person, how do you put a dollar amount? Exactly like Cami said, what is your mom worth? You know, would you leave your mom there? Hell no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't leave any of your family members there. So people wonder why we're fighting still. It's because nothing has happened.
Yeah, and grief isn't a linear cycle. People grieve in many different ways, and quite frankly, I won't be able to grieve until I have my mom home, you know. And so yeah, we were talking about the upcoming trial. There's a publication ban, so we can't say anything. It's long.
We regularly sit down with the Crown attorneys, the ones that are prosecuting him. So they've, you know, kept us up to date on some of the things that are going to be shared at the trial. Obviously we can't share it, but emotionally it's a lot to carry, and to try to prepare ourselves, you know, for what we're going to have to sit through. It's going to be a trying time, you know. And again, like, you know, I said earlier, when it comes down to, you know, like the aunties and that in our family, like we need to remember to be there for the girls, right? For you know, their support, and to have them lean on us when they need to. So yeah, so we, you know, we ask that everyone keep us, you know, in their prayers. That is always a constant. We ask that, you know, light a smudge for us. You know, whatever your religious background is, to just always send us that good energy and that strength that we're going to need over the next 6 weeks. So
So, yeah.
Oh,
that's
Bear
okay.
Clan, I forgot about that one. So we want to just also quickly talk about Bear Clan Patrol and the community outreach that we do. I am one of the coordinators for our organization. I'm the coordinator for our North End location. And so Bear Clan was reestablished after the discovery of Tina Fontaine. You know, when she was found, the community, she was a young 15-year-old Indigenous young woman that had a whole life ahead of her. And, her being vulnerable, she was preyed upon. And the community was outraged. And, that's where it all began. We said, as a community, we're not going to stand for this anymore. We cannot allow our women to walk these streets and feel unsafe. So Bear Clan was established to be a community presence, to be there to check on our vulnerable, assist in any way that we can. Um, you know, it's about that sense of community, sense of safety, the solidarity and belonging. So I love the work we do. I believe in the work we do. And, for me, I always talk about like, in the last, since losing Morgan, we've had lots of loss since then. And here we are still, having to push forward and continue doing what we're doing. We haven't allowed ourselves to grieve. And, but with Bear Clan, it allows, me and others, Cami has come out to walk many times as well. And, to give back, to our community and our relatives that are living, on the streets. And so that is our medicine. That is our way to help our people and to help our women. So, yeah.
Through that hard work and
Yeah.
just like as you said, our way
Lead
of
with
giving
our
back,
hearts.
and
Yeah.
it really teaches you humbleness and empathy, and as we as Indigenous people say, to live that good life, to walk that good life. And people are always asking, so like, how can we help? Well, this was a start, acknowledging that this is something that happens.
You guys reaching out, wanting us to speak about everything, right? Like, again, there's been so much that has happened in the almost 2 years that it's hard to put it into, the hour or 90 minutes that you were giving us. But the first step was, yeah, exactly that. You reaching out to us, asking us to share some of what we've been through. So like Cami says there, become informed ally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, outreach
Floppy.
plan.
Someone say something?
I think that's accidental.
Oh.
So yeah, sharing missing persons posters as they happen and not after the fact, spreading the awareness, and instead of talking about this just one time, make it an everyday conversation, have empathy for others, because you never know what someone's going through. And just like you or I or you behind the screen, like we all have our own stories, and just acknowledge our vulnerable population. Like my auntie said, they're humans too.
Yeah.
Say hi, tell them to have a good day.
Acknowledge them, for the most part, a lot of times they're just walked on by. So I make it a point to say hi to each and every single person that I come across.
Yeah. And amplify Indigenous voices. Share away, talk about it,
Share our website. Come to Camp Morgan.
Right
there you go.
So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and we do have, if you are on Facebook, we do have a couple of groups. One of them is called Camp Morgan.
That's the main one.
That's the main one. And then we have a second group called Search the Landfills. And again, things like upcoming rallies, information, things like that. We tried to keep up to date, but mostly our website. If you're wanting to know anything, that is the best place to go. If you're looking to donate monetary, there is a link in there. Supplies needed that, we try to list that as
We have
well.
an Amazon wish
Yeah,
list.
we have an Amazon wish list. Like, it takes a lot, to
24/7.
yeah, to have someone stay. And it's, so we're most appreciative for you guys reaching out, and hopefully this, you know, reaching a lot of people.
And I hope that this helps inspires the next change makers, and just, you know, maybe ways that you guys are able to continue this work from your end, right? Because everyone in society collectively has their own job in making this world a better place, I would like to think. And
In a safer
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
so we got you, everyone. Thank you. And we never say goodbye, we say bamapi, which means see you again.
hmm
So yeah.
We might have
Yeah.
questions now.
No, bye guys. Yeah.
Yeah, no questions have appeared up, but I want to thank both of you for your time and sharing your story, sharing your journey of everything that you've gone through. And then challenges that you face and how you girls are so powerful. You know, you girls speak really well. It all comes from the heart. And, I want to, on behalf of IMJ, on behalf of the United Church, I want to say thank you, Chimigwech, for being with us today and sharing your kind words. In closing, we have one of our youth, Insui, who's here to do a closing prayer with us. And I'm trying to find her on the I'm trying to find her on my participation list here so I could spotlight her. All right, there we go. Here we go. So I'm going to spotlight Insui, add her, and I'm going to remove myself here. Welcome, Insui.
Hi, Inslee.
Hello. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for talking to us today. You're doing very important work. It's work quite frankly, you guys shouldn't have to do. But unfortunately, this is the world we live in. That's very unfair. But thank you so much for coming today. Let us pray. Dear Creator, we thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for Cambria and Melissa for their presence here, and the Harris family for all the work they have done and they're still doing during this long, difficult, trying, and unjust time. We pray that justice prevails during the upcoming trial and that the perpetrator is brought to justice. Creator, please be with the families of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit Plus, and help us be advocates for change and fight this system filled with hate, systemic racism, and injustice. We pray for a world in which governments do not rank and prioritize people based on their race. We pray for a world in which Indigenous women and girls do not have to live in fear for their lives and in fear for their loved ones. Creator, we pray for safety, health, and strength, and for us to walk and act with humility, empathy, and kindness. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just back to the I know before we end, but the trial, so it is scheduled to begin April 29th, running till June 6th.
Really long, yeah.
It's approximately 6 weeks long. I don't think we'll make too much of a presence that first week, which is next week.
Yeah.
After. And it'll be starting, I think it's May 6th. We'll be there a little more regularly. So but we will have a family room. If anyone is in the Winnipeg area wanting to come by and maybe say a prayer with us, sit with us, kind of share your strength with us, because it's going to be a heavy time. Like we're already, feeling it. And so if you're wanting to come by, we're at the convention center. Our family room is there on the main level, and we'll be there that whole 6 weeks. So we appreciate you all. We thank you guys for allowing us to come on and speak about Morgan and just, how everything we're doing exactly that we shouldn't be doing, but we will, right? Because she deserves that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, once again, thank you, Cambria, and thank you, Melissa, for joining us today, and thank you for everyone for participating. If we've missed any questions along the way, any comments, we have received a few comments that's directly for both of yous. We'll share those with you once I get things transcribed here, and we'll relay the messages that have been shared from some participants that were directly for use, encouraging messages. But thank you everyone for joining. Once again, thank you, Cambria and Melissa, for joining us tonight, and thank you for your time. We'll be in touch.
Thank you,
very
Joni.
Yes, miigwech, chumigwech.
Okay.
And yes, thank you everyone for joining. We will follow up with some resources through email later in the week. Miigwech.
Okay.
You're in the